If I had 30 minutes with her phone, where should I look for signs of cheating? I'm going to bring up wanting an open phone policy. She has not cheated on me before, but she cheated in a past relationship and hid it for years from him. And she's been protective of her phone. Sometimes she gets insecure that I cheat, I don't, and sometimes I get insecure of her cheating. If she agrees to the phone policy, where should I look if I had only 30 minutes of access to it before she has the chance to delete things? The last time I insisted on looking, she only let me look at a few things with her phone in her hand, and I only looked in the typical places: messages, social app messages. She was very nervous. I suspect she's the type of person to delete messages on IG and WhatsApp if she's cheating, but I don't know how to look for this. And I want to find a way to know if Tinder was recently installed, deleted. I'll look through all her WhatsApp contacts to see if any have notifications on silent. I'll look for a second Instagram account. What else? I'm positive that she still has old hookups in her contacts, so I'll have to somehow differentiate between people she has added and no longer talks to compared to the people she still talks to. If she disagrees to the phone policy, then I assume she will delete evidence when alone and be more vigilant in hiding it in the future. Redditor's reaction story 2 after. Redditor 1, op. The thing you have to understand is that in any relationship the number one issue is that of trust. It is so vitally important that whether a relationship can be defined as great, okay or crap can often have that level of implicit trust at the root of it. So your problem is that because of her history, you are finding it difficult to maintain a level of trust with her and are now looking for some form of validation. But that in itself shows you that where you are now with her, trust just simply doesn't exist. The core of your problem is not what is or isn't on her phone, nor does it lay with how nervous she is at you looking at her phone and you asking what to look for. It's that you feel the need to look in the first place. So please understand that if you are in this position now, you quite simply have no trust in her, and if that is the case, why are you even bothering? No one, and I mean no one, should ever be in the position of being the relationship cop and be in the position of having to police their partner's activities. Because if you find that you are in that role, it is well past time to call it quits. So please for your own sake and your own sanity, stop this line of thought. Recognize that no matter how you feel or how much you think you are in love with her, she is just not worth it. She is not worth investigating. She is not worth policing. Her phone is not worth looking through forensically. She is just not worth it. Answer. I'll think about it for the next few days. I may decide not to look, and just trust. She has trust issues too and sometimes thinks that I cheat, so we both have trouble with trust. I usually have trouble trusting in relationships, but especially because of her history of cheating, which was many years ago. I don't know. It would put me in a difficult position if she refuses the open phone policy. It would make me more suspicious, and make her feel like I don't trust her when in fact, she could very well be innocent with me and I don't want to ruin a good thing. 2 weeks ago when her phone alarm went off in the morning, I went to grab it to turn it off, and she ran out of bed and yanked it out of my hand. I insisted on looking through her social apps the next day. She was so resistant and refused until I got up to leave. Then she let me, but only with her phone in her hand and with a lot of resistance. She told me how in her past long-term relationships 6 years ago she would be so sneaky that she'd book days off at work, cheat with a co-worker on her boyfriend, then show up at home like nothing happened. It makes me think if it's happening to me. She says she's changed and loves me. I believe she loves me.
Stay tuned for more.
Redditor 2. Check conversations with her friends. Redditor follow up. This. Pick her 2 or 3 best friends or sisters. Read those convos. Those are what they forget to delete. Also check her texts and messages for names that make 0 sense. Her dad has never sent a text in his whole life but has a text convo with her. Check that. Redditor 3. Google Maps history. Story 2. Grandma gets some sticky revenge on her husband's mistress. Many years ago, when my grandma was still married to her second husband, my step-grandpa, he liked to go to the local senior center. There he met a woman and proceeded to start cheating on my grandma with her. Even going so far as to introduce his mistress as his wife, and say he and my grandma split. Before you ask, yes, she knew he was married. My grandma owned her own business selling hearing aids, and she would go to that senior center relatively often to give presentations. My grandma was so angry at this woman that she went to her house with a big bottle of syrup she got from Costco. She spread syrup all over her driveway, garage door, front stoop, front walk, front door, and yard. Then she just got in her car and left. Story 3. Ex-wife accused me of cheating, so I did. I was married for a few years ago, and my ex-wife was insanely jealous. She would constantly snoop through my phone, and read all my Facebook messages. I have a female friend, that I have been friends with since I was like 15 years old. We met online on a forum, turns out she lived the next city over, and we would talk every day. We had only actually met once in real life. As we got older, we drifted apart, and we both got married to other people. But we would still check in from time to time though, just to see how the other person was doing. Turns out things with her husband were falling apart about the time things started falling apart in my marriage too, and she had left him. We started talking again. She told me how she had just gotten a new puppy, and I was telling her about my new job, nothing even close to inappropriate. My wife found our Facebook conversation by snooping through my phone, and screamed at me saying I was cheating on her with my friend. I tried to explain that we were just having a friendly conversation and nothing more. But she said I was a liar and a cheater, and she was leaving me to move back in with her parents. She packed a quick bag, and left. A couple of days later she asked if she could buy that weekend with a truck to grab all of her stuff. She also asked if I could go somewhere for the afternoon since she didn't want to see me, or have me cause any trouble. I said sure, and made plans with my friend. So as my ex-wife was at my place packing up her stuff, I was at my friend's place doing the exact thing she had accused me of doing.
Stay tuned for more.
Story 4. Ruined my asset boss's marriage, so I hope this fits here. It felt like pro-revenge but in hindsight. It's quite petty. About 10 years ago when I was 19 I worked for a regional grocery store in the meat packing department. Pay was bad and I had second shift. I came in at 3 and left at 11. It wasn't a terrible job all things considered. I had the meat room to myself so I could listen to music and really just not be annoyed by other employees. My duties when I showed up was to package more ground beef and other beef-based products and put them on the shelf. After 5 I also had to juggle working behind the deli counter. Well, shortly after getting hired the boss of the meat department showed back up from vacation and I was the new guy. Everything was fine at the beginning but I found when I would clock in the lady behind the counter. We'll call her V wouldn't be there and there would be a line. So I would clock in. Spend the first 30 minutes of my shift doing her job. No problem, I actually liked that position. Well, after the line was done I would almost always see Mr. Boss staring me down angry I'm not doing my job. He would give me the rant about doing my duties unless customers needed my help and they almost always did but he wouldn't listen. Come to find out, the reason V isn't behind the counter is because her and Mr. Boss are having meetings in his office with the door closed. Not my husband or wife. Not my problem. We continue this dance of me covering her station and getting in trouble for it for a few weeks until an ice storm hits. I tell my boss I can't my car out and am waiting on a ride so I might be a little late. He proceeded to fire me because this is the last straw BTW. I hadn't had any write-ups. I agree that it's fine because I hate this job anyway. Fast forward 2 years. I'm 21. And I'm celebrating with my friends at basically the only local bar in this terrible tiny whole town, and when we walk in, who do I see? Why, if it isn't Mr. Boss and not V but his wife. He looks at me and tries to act like it's a happy coincidence. I sit down. Tell him it's my 21st. He buys me a beer as a gift and I chat him up. Enter my revenge. I introduce myself to his wife and tell her how he treated me. Talking about how I would cover the deli counter almost every shift for half an hour and then get in trouble for it because it wasn't my job. No matter how many times I tried telling me boss I wouldn't have to cover deli, if he and V weren't having their daily locked door meeting in his office. She looked at him. Looked at me. And couldn't say a word. It could be read as S-City. But his wife was super polite and friendly and not in that S-City southern religious style. But a genuinely nice person. I'm glad I could help pull the wool to let her know her husband is a complete garbage person. Edit. Thanks for the awards. WTH do I with Reddit gold? I got other stories like this, should I post them? Obviously with way more periods. Redditor's reaction story 5 after. Redditor 1, V entirely misunderstood the job of meat packer. Redditor 2, what kind of moron gives an employee grief because the employee is essentially covering for the moron while the moron carries on an affair? This guy. Redditor follow up, right? That person should be your best friend, or at the very least you don't actively antagonize them. Then again, maybe his boss was on his case about not enough meat getting packed in the morning, and he couldn't admit it was because the counter person was mysteriously missing. So Op got to be the scapegoat. Redditor 3, good job. A beer is no compensation at all. Redditor 4, dang, I could imagine finding out like that must have sucked. But at least she found out and hopefully got out. Op answer, if I had to bet, knowing the people from that town, I bet she swept it under the rug to keep up with appearances. Sucks, but maybe he's on a tighter leash and he got some hell after I left.
Stay tuned for more.
Story 5. What day did you get married? Again? My ex got married a couple of years ago. We're still in touch because of the kids, to the woman he started seeing when we were still together. I've had to talk to her a lot over the years, but after she decided to verbally attack me a month before their wedding, I have avoided her. She made it clear that she hates me beyond reason. I feel no need to continue being nice to her, but will just avoid her rather than being rude in return. Their anniversary is 1st November. I wish them a happy anniversary on Halloween instead. It's the small things. Story 6. So you like to steal from your employees and call them thieves? I worked in a shithole company for less than 3 months. The owner was the worst PS crook who would literally steal wages, defraud customers and love to berate workers, call them thieves and all sorts of crap for no reason besides maybe projecting his crimes. Everyone was afraid of not being to find a job later due to background checks and usual predatory business tricks. He fired one of my colleagues just because he was black due to the lack of proper culture. Somewhere around the 3 months mark, he verbally attacked a nice colleague who had a wife work in there too. So bad that his wife passed out and we had to call 911 to get her to ER. The reason? Fixing customers' problems so he couldn't upsell crap. So I just had it. Took that fat PS aside, shouted as loud as I could and told him off about all of his crimes, then handed my resignation. He tried to cheat me out of my last paycheck with bogus deductions. So I read the local laws and served him with legal papers. He initially told me he won't pay me a cent, which I told him exact law articles and mentioned I will be his worst nightmare. Told him I had no jobs besides taking him to court and having him bleed money while I would self-represent. I ended up not only getting my paycheck but all stolen wages and then some. I then told all my colleagues how to do the same. Sometimes you need to go after bullies, show them you got nothing to lose and they will back off. They need to know they are not as smart or powerful as they think. Update. The owner mostly hired new immigrants and kids just finished high school, which made it easier to bully them. I also updated the capitalist word since it hurts some people's religion apparently. Story 7. When your ex tells you to move out while she's on a work trip because the guy she cheated on you with is moving in, you get very creative moving out. I did this to an ex who asked me to move out while she was on a work trip and told me she was coming back with her new boyfriend. We were still together when she left. I got these little noisemakers, battery-powered ones the size of a quarter that emit sounds at just the right volume that you aren't sure if you really heard it, so quiet that 2 people could be sitting in an average-sized room and while one can barely hear it the other wouldn't hear a thing. They last ages, and fit perfectly in light fixtures and in wall outlets. I got a box of 20 of them for like $100 on eBay and got so creative all over the house, her car. I even hid them in a boat her father got her rich family and she grew up sailing. Now these little bastards make a noise at complete random intervals, could be minutes, could be hours, could take a whole day off. They cycle noises like children laughing, a dying breath as they called it, a whistle, scratching noises, some other ones I can't remember but you get the idea. It was so unpredictable it was near impossible for someone to just figure it out. Months go by, I get a new place, get my life back up. Now we had a few friends in common and one of them I kept up with. They were kinda sour about how she ended things but they had grown up together and kept up the friendship, loosely talking and catching up on occasion. I never really asked about her, But one day we get to talking and he's wanting to prank some friends on a camping trip, so I tell him about the noisemakers. As I'm telling him about them, he slowly starts making this face, like he's gradually losing his acid. He's got this huge grin on his face and asks me, "You put these in X acid, didn't you?" And when I admit, he starts laughing hysterically. Turns out her new boyfriend had only lasted a few months, and had left telling her that he couldn't handle whatever was going on with them and their mental states. Turns out for a while they had both heard things, and sometimes only one would hear them, which gave the illusion that something really ducked with them was going on in their heads at different times. They couldn't figure it out, and eventually he wanted out completely, and having run down all the crazy list of acid people who are hearing voices would think, ended it believing he had been infected with some brain worm the government was putting in vaccines or something like that. It was amazing. I hadn't expected to hear anything about it. I rode that train for weeks. When it went away, I got another hit of that high. She moved out, told her parents she didn't want the house and to give it to her brother or sell it. Wouldn't tell them why. I always tell people who ask about her that I hold no grudge, and don't tell them the part where I totally ducked with her so bad I overshot the got her backstage and hit the blissful state of satisfied with my work. My wife knows this story by heart because it's her favorite one to tell.
Stay tuned for more.
Redditor's reactions. Redditor 1. For anyone who wants one of these little gadgets, Google Anoyatron. Redditor follow-up. My brother bought 3-4 of these and hid them in our lounge. We easily found all of them because he wasn't good at hiding them. We on the other hand were very good at hiding them. Went to his bedroom, behind a poster on the wall, inside a packet of cards. He never found any of them and couldn't sleep for a couple of weeks before we told him where they were. Redditor 2. Update. So after I posted this comment, some people reached out to me to see if I could tell them more about the product. I couldn't, but coincidentally I found one of mine and it's called the Eviltron. I decided to put it in my mom's house. It has 5 sound choices and I set it on a guy who loudly whispers, "Hey, can you hear me?" and put it in the detritus that sits by her kitchen phone. Now we wait, I thought to myself. I didn't hear anything from her that night, but the next day she texts me, "Grandma's hearing aids are glitching. They're chirping non-stop and it's driving her crazy." She's almost in tears. This gave me pause, but there's no way the device could impact her hearing aids, I'm sure, so I don't say anything. The next day Mom calls and casually mentions she's made an appointment to get the aids checked and it's only going to cost her $100 for the checkup, but the aids aren't under warranty, so if they need fixing, it's going to be expensive. Oh crap. I tell her, "Well, I need to let you know something. I'm sure they're unrelated, but on the off chance." And I confess I put an Eviltron in her house. There's a long pause, then she bursts out laughing. The BTCH had pulled a double cross on me. She found it the first night and played my ass like a fiddle for 2 days. Good on you, mama. Good on you. Original reply below. I sent one of these to my BFF who was stationed in Japan. It's called an Anoyatron sold by ThinkGeek. Anywho, he put it in his chief's office on the inside lip of a metal filing cabinet. They have a magnet so you can stick them anywhere. Then he left on a 2-week engagement. When he got back he heard the stories. Chief had IT come in and check all electronics. He had maintenance come in and check all appliances. Finally, he lost his asset and starting throwing all the furniture out in a hallway in a fit of anger. Only then was he able to rid himself of the infuriating sound. My BFF never ever told anyone he did it. Redditor follow up. I did this to a supervisor many years ago. Several co-workers were in on it and couldn't hear what he was talking about, while other co-workers weren't and agreed they also heard it. He had the maintenance guy pulling down the ceiling tiles before the responsible one told him what was up. I got caught because I couldn't keep a straight face, but never did give up my cohorts. Edit to add, this guy was fond of pranks like jumping out at people or moving and hiding their supply carts way on the other side of the building so they had to hunt them down, so he totally had it coming. Comment. Want to be clear on a couple things that came up in the other post. In some ways I'm not too proud of this. It was a long time ago and I was in a really dark place. The whole event just tipped me and I responded in a no FCKS to give state the best I could, by just being a menace. She also did it all through a short impersonal email that just sucked ass. I'm not saying that's all an excuse, just some context. Also, the house was purged of the devices after she left. I let her brother in on it because they weren't close at all and he lived with their mom most his life. We were close because we gamed together and he was able to find all but 2 of them. He ended up using them for other pranks for a long time. As far as the original noise chips I got, they were a very simple board build I got from some guy on eBay ages ago, so I can't track down a direct link and I don't think he is on eBay anymore. I'm seeing a lot of references to one called the Annoyatron on ThinkGeek and it sounds like it was probably the influence behind the ones I got or vice versa. I encourage anyone who wants them to hunt on eBay or even Etsy. They were pretty simple and I can imagine someone out there still makes them. Also I would say see if you can't make them yourself. There might be some DIY guides for it out there. I'll see what else I can find. PS2. Apart from being the best console ever made, I found something that honestly in my opinion trumps the ones I had. This is a small unit that lets you record 10 seconds of your own audio. Which is honestly pretty cool because you could make the sounds and voices more personal to your victim. Fun delivery, a noise hidden recordable annoying sound prank gag joke.